Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time, new ground. Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's like, you guys are talking about old episodes. Where new ground can there be? But if you've been listening to this podcast before, you know we always cover new ground. Speaking of new ground, find your own new ground. Patreon.com/IABD. Get to see us, the video, get the bonus episodes. Not just of this show, you get everything from the IABDpresents.com network. Become a Patreon member. It's real easy. We'll love you. You'll love the extra content. And find out if we loved new ground on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We are here to talk about the episode New Ground. First impressions.
Again, I get hung up on the title sometimes, and I figure out what they meant eventually. Mm-hmm. And when they first started off, it almost felt like they were jumping right back into the idea of there being what constitutes a historic event. So that seems strange to me, but it really, they completely blindsided me about what the episode was really going to be about, maybe. And it's kind of hard to say which one was the A or, well, no, I mean, the Alexander thing had to be the A thing, right? I mean,
it was, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Again, the disaster the ship was dealing with became secondary for most of the episode. In fact, there were several times this episode where like Worf would get done with the Alexander scene and then walk on the bridge, and I just can't help but think in another version of this episode we're just seeing him walk on the bridge and we haven't got what he was doing off the bridge, and so it's nice to fill in those gaps. I liked this episode a lot. I do think. Sorry, Steven, I jumped in front of you, but I was already talking. I think I appreciate it more as a parent now, and I've got some things to say about that from a parent's perspective. But yeah, I liked this episode a lot.
I don't know if I loved it, but I thought I liked the way it took its time in a lot of spots. The whole family drama part was, if you set it in modern day Columbus and they weren't on a starship, all that talk, any familiar relationship like that, it would be appropriate. And I thought, especially the very first scene when he's talking to his mom about the boy and stuff, it was just really long. There was no music. It was just a mom, her adopted son, and they're talking about the grandkid, and they're having a long conversation. Now, not only the grandkid, but what's the best way to take care of him, and here's what I'm going through in life. Here's what I'm going through in life. And I thought that I really enjoyed, not the right word, but I thought it was really well done. It was really real, as real as it can get for a show set in the 24th century. So, and in some ways that could make the whole episode seem very blah, I guess. But I thought, again, when I see a Klingon episode, I'm still, my knee-jerk reaction is, oh boy. But
really?
I thought, bit, but not like it used to be, I should say. Sorry, I'm getting there. But not like it used to be. And I think, again, that's because we build up these relationships. And, the whole time I was just thinking of Kalar this entire episode, and they finally got around to that was, obviously part of the issue and everything. I liked it as well.
So we start this episode. They mention they're testing the new propulsion system, so they're tricking us into what the Ace story is going to be.
Yeah. And
then Alexander shows up, and he's been grown and recast. This time around, he's played by Brian
Bonsall.
But yeah, I don't know how to say his name.
I think it's Bonsall.
Brian Bonsall.
Yeah. It
could be. He's the actor I probably best remember as Alexander. He will play him in 7 episodes of Star Trek. 7 episodes just of Next Gen.
But he's not in
any episodes of DS9.
Interesting.
Different
I
actor.
didn't realize until I looked, because I wrote down, man, he's a cute little bugger. Yeah. He's the kid he was the littlest kid on Family Ties.
Yep. He was also the main kid in Blank Check.
Oh, that's right.
Wow.
That's right.
And he was in Mikey. He played Mikey in Mikey. So Brian does have 2 recent acting credits, but before these last 2, his most recent credit was 94. So he kind of stopped acting when The Next Generation went off the air.
Yeah.
Went away from acting for a long time. Yeah, so I was looking up continuity age-wise, because Worf says in this episode that when he was younger than Alexander, his parents were killed. That is false. Alexander would be 3 or 4 in this episode, although they play him older.
He certainly looks older than that.
3. I think he's 3 because, well, when did Worf hook up with Kalar? That was season 3, early season 3.
Feels like it was 2 seasons ago.
Well, you kind of beat me to the questions I was going to get to next, but I mean, did they ever really make it clear how much time was supposed to have passed? Is it passing the same as it would on Earth? I mean, both figuratively and literally, like with the way physics work or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
As far as
so he's 2 in this episode.
What?
Yeah.
He looks like way too tall to be 2. Yeah.
No. So Klingons clearly age much faster because following along his timeline on Memory Alpha, when he's 9, he's going to enlist in the Klingon Defense Force as a soldier on a warship. So he's like treated as an adult when he's 9 and looks like an old teenager, like a late teenager.
Did they ever establish that before this? Like the age rates of?
I don't believe so. But back to the original point, Worf's parents were killed when Worf was 5. So Worf lied about being younger than Alexander when his parents were killed.
Well, I mean, maybe he was simply mistaken too.
Yeah, you could argue just memory stuff that Alexander looks older, and memories are funny things. But yeah, the Alexander aging never really made sense. But the fact that we get to see him as a young adult in Deep Space Nine, like they really, especially when O'Brien's kid Molly is still like young at the end of DS9, it really kind of it doesn't quite line up. But
I guess I misremember because I'm probably thinking of Nog or something. Is that the
Nog grows up really fast too, but we don't know exactly how old Nog is. I don't think when Deep Space Nine starts. I think he's supposed to be an older child. We basically see Nog and Jake grow up on Deep Space Nine.
Right. I guess I kept thinking about that. Like I felt like I'd seen Alexander as one of them, like about that same age together or something, but I guess not.
Well, maybe because we see Alexander at the end of DS9 as like an adult serving on a Klingon ship, and by the end of DS9, we see Nog and Jake as adults too. Young adults, but still adults. Okay. So yeah, I think you're right. I think they kind of aged him to match the other kids on DS9, which is interesting. He's not in a lot of DS9. He's more on Next Gen. But Alexander,
that's the reason why.
But yeah,
I'm like misremembering like a lot because I hadn't even watched past the point where he probably wasn't.
The point is, I really wish they'd done more to make it sense. But I also like the way they use Alexander as a character, both in this episode and going forward, in a number of ways. So I'm not complaining too heavy because if he stayed a baby for a couple seasons, it would not really work for the stories as well.
I like that very first scene with Geordi when he comes in and he's excited and he talks to Worf and Data about it. And they're not, which again, it's kind of cheesy. And he's like, "Why am I'm talking to the wrong crowd or whatever?" Which, I guess it just shows how excited he is about it. And then I like that he's just like, "I'm going to go talk to somebody else about this who's excited." So I did enjoy that.
So Worf gets the kid, his mother, the whole scene with him and his mom in 10 Forward, where she's secretly come to dump his kid back on him because she's ready for retirement. I like that. I think she's right. He does belong with his father and everything, but I also feel like she's playing it like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I appreciate that you thought of me, but I just want to enjoy my retirement, and I'm not enjoying my retirement now."
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly unfair to her.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing that happens a lot. I mean, I'm guessing it happens a lot, which is, "Oh yeah, we'd love to have the kids over," and then it's like, you know what? I don't necessarily need this anymore, or not necessarily need it, but you know what? I'll come visit from time to time. I don't have to be around them all the time, but especially if you live planets away, systems away. Well,
I found a quote from Ron Nemore that says, "Hey, Klingons mature faster." Okay, when asked about it. Sorry.
Did you guys get the impression that, in my mind, going into the episode, I would have thought Worf would, at the end of his shift or whatever, would call to Earth and be like, "Hey, how's it going, buddy?" But it sounds like that never happens. Like, it sounds like he hasn't talked to him. He's talked to his mom, his dad, but he hasn't talked to the boy in a long time.
So my first note, and I realize this relates to Worf as well, is I'd completely forgotten about Alexander up until this point. And it felt like he did too, because it was like, when he was like, "Oh, you mean or you and my father?" No. And so he seemed so surprised, like, "Oh."
I mean, he forgot Alexander's birthday. And as we saw in the scene where he's talking to his teacher. And then that's also the scene where he says, like, "Oh, I don't know how long he's staying," which of course upsets Alexander, understandably. that you're looking for stability, and this guy that you've been told you're going to move in with is like, yeah, I don't know how long he's staying. I'm sure to Worf that was like, oh, I'm being generous because I don't plan on him staying at all. And I'm saying, well, we don't know.
Oh,
but
wow.
The boy, he was planning to stay.
I hadn't thought of it that way. I mean, I thought of it like the word he should have used would be like indefinite.
Yeah.
Which could have been, but yeah.
And then Alexander turns and says, what does indefinite mean? Picard is extremely sympathetic to parenting duties and acts like an employee we all wish employers would act. Like for a second, I thought he was going to say, well, if you can't do your job, but instead he's like, no, family comes first. You take care of this. Security can wait. And it's Worf who's like, no, I want to do my duty. I want to go back to work.
I guess we haven't really seen Picard interact with that many parents, but he certainly must have. Yeah. And this is a ship that's supposed to be designed for that kind of dynamic.
The Enterprise D is specifically designed because people had to leave their families to serve on starships. And Starfleet thought, let's build starships where they can serve with their families.
That's amazing.
Of course, spoiler alert, in the next few years, Starfleet's going to go into dark, heavy wars, and they start designing starships that don't accommodate families because you don't want to put your families in danger. So they go back to no families on starships. But at this point, the Federation's pretty peaceful, so they put families on starships. They go on a field trip to the zoo because the Enterprise D apparently has a small zoo. And that's when Alexander steals and lies, which Worf's mother warned him. These are the things he does now.
I wrote down stealing. That's very dishonorable. And sure enough, that's the word he used. I was like, that's dishonorable.
About the teacher. The way that she was being played, it felt like it rang really true to me. And there was a lot of things that she was doing that seemed a little grating at first. It's like, what's going on? What's with these eyes? What's going on here? But it was so understandable. First of all, just like the awkwardness of that, the Worf not knowing the birthday, and just that they let that silence hang just enough, and those glances between all three of them, and also during that field trip where she just kept kind of glancing over what Alexander was doing, even though she just enough. It's like, okay, what's your problem? Why are you like, what's the attitude there? And they get to that, and then they get that whole parent interaction of like, my child can't do anything wrong. He would tell the truth. This is, I take his word for it. You're wrong. And just, we get teachers complain about that all the time. And, it's just.
But in that same scene, Keith, right after he is defending his son, he then reaches into his son's pocket and pulls up the model, and he has the maturity to act ashamed and admit that he was wrong, even if not in words.
Yes, exactly. And that is, I love what they were doing for Worf's character throughout this episode, really. Yeah. Again, I kind of related to it, even though, of course, I'm not a parent, as I said. Because of these things, I felt reinforced that would be just awful at being able to do this. So,
and to go back to my previous thing, that I don't think these guys talk, and I know Klingons are different, and they're probably not great around the dinner table talking, but there was a lot of lecturing for little Alexander, not a lot of open-ended questions or anything, not real conversations like, what'd you do at school today or anything? And maybe we just didn't see those, but I feel like those moments don't happen.
Well, to be fair to Worf, he has no experience raising a child yet.
Right.
But also, when he first came on board,
I don't either, but I knew he was doing something wrong.
We saw him asking some of those kinds of questions when they first came on board, and it played like season 1 Picard with Wesley. It's just like that kind of a, do you like your teachers? What did you do? Or that kind of
So Worf is naturally very stoic. And so when you put that in front of a kid, of course he's going to be a little less, he's not going to ask, well, how do you feel about staying here versus going to school? That's not in Worf's personality.
Yeah.
It will be because he grows and changes and, gets better.
I thought, and jumping to the end kind of, but their interaction at the end, I imagine, is every Klingon. Actually, it's a lot of Earth father-dad or father-son relationships, just very awkward and I don't really know my son and I don't know how to talk to him. And the kid's just I don't know what to do. I'm a kid. So again, I thought it rang very true. My dad was a very gregarious guy and a lot of fun, but there were also plenty of times where it's I don't know what to talk to you about, Dad, because I'm a kid. And he was just let's talk about sports or whatever. Or
let's talk about the whole scene where Worf's like, we could face this challenge together if you're up for it.
Yeah.
See, my dad grew up as a farmer and is not emotionally available. He's never said I love you to me. He's not that type of person, but I know he cares. Like, I know, he's got his own way, and he and I did not relate. I did not like him growing up. I like him now, but I did not like him because we did not relate. We were too different. And this is a TV trope where the stoic father, and I had a stoic father, learns to be understanding and relate to the kid in a way that my father never will, because that's not who he is. And, the characters on TV can be more fluid and adaptive and grow more than people in real life generally do. But the thing with Worf is, I think we've seen enough to know Worf already has the softer side. So when it comes out, it feels natural. I don't feel like my dad ever had that softer side, really. So the teacher, Miss Kyle, I thought she was a good teacher. I just didn't like her. Was played by Jennifer Edwards. It's just something about her. It rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. It wasn't anything I can point to specifically. But
that's what I was referencing earlier.
Yeah.
I think that it felt like you wanted her to be a little stronger and a little like a bigger, more forceful presence. And they were really leaning into that kind of wide-eyed, sort of frightened, sort of nervous.
I thought she was confident. I thought she knew what she was doing and knew what she was saying and knew how to handle things. Something about her.
No, but she did. But it was like the way that she was forced to interact with. She was intimidated by having to deal with Worf and the child and the awkwardness of that situation. It felt like, and it kept just shining through everything.
I think the something about her, Jimmy, was her hair.
That could be part of it. Yeah. She is best known for SOB, A Fine Mess, and Dismembering the Band. She's a writer and actress. She doesn't actually have that many credits. This is her only Trek appearance. No Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was in an episode of The Nanny, though. So, that's almost as good as Seinfeld. I was a little sad we did not get more of Georgia Brown as Helena Rosenko. I really liked that character, and I thought she was well used in this episode, but I feel like what her plot would have been the rest of the episode went to Troy instead, which is fine because it was a really good use of Troy. Yeah. But you couldn't have them both in the episode, and it's a little disappointing to me because I would have liked more of Worf's mom.
My early question was, why is Troy all up in Worf's business? Because I felt like initially she was in his business as the ship's counselor, and then later I felt like it was as a friend, more as a friend, which that part makes sense to me. But initially it's like, hey man, are you doing this with everybody on the ship who's got a kid? That's not a good relationship? Because there should be some other counselors on the ship that can help with that.
There are, but I think she understands that she knows Worf well enough at this point to know that he's not at all prepared and he's going to fail without help. And she's trying to help.
And that was my thing. When it turned over to more of a friend thing, then it made more sense to me. But initially, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say it felt like both to me. I mean, I feel like you needed a counselor of this level and this familiarity with him to even navigate that kind of wall that he had up. I mean, he was just adamant that he didn't need any sort of help, even though he clearly did, and probably knew that he did to an extent. But it was, I think we got the Klingon part of the episode. I don't think I wrote that down.
Way. It's the Klingon way.
I liked we got some more to see of that, and I forgot to write this down. We've talked about this earlier. In the series, the way that he views the way that Klingon should be may or may not actually be the way that they should be, or actually are, as far as the way that honor works and the way that you could just give this to a child and say, "Here you go." He didn't. Alexander probably didn't have the same kinds of, at least not the same type of loss that Worf did, in the sense that Worf would have been old enough to remember certain kinds of things that he would want to cling on to. I know. God, I hate myself for that one. As far as his heritage,
you shouldn't. You need to always do those when you think of it. I fully support that kind of humor in this podcast.
But you see where I'm going with that. Alexander wouldn't have the same sort of impetus to use that reasoning to drive his personality.
Yeah. Well, Alexander is soft. He was raised by Kalar, who's not hard warrior. And I don't use soft in derogatory manner, like more human, I guess. That while Alexander, Kalar was half human, half Klingon, Worf's full-blooded Klingon, but raised by humans. But Worf acts like a full-blooded Klingon a lot of times, or at least the ideal of a full-blooded Klingon.
Or yes, I think he overcompensates sometimes.
Definitely like Spock in the logic.
Spock.
Absolutely, he overcompensates. Yeah, but Alexander, despite being 3/4 Klingon, is very in touch with his human side, and you can see why, because he started out with Kalar, who leaned into her human side, and then he went to Worf's parents, who are human. So Worf has to dig into what he learned from his upbringing with humans to parent Alexander properly. And part of Alexander's story going forward, especially in DS9, is how Alexander's going to relate to the Klingon culture. So I really appreciate that. I also really appreciated how complex the talks Troy and Worf had. Like, there was the moment where they're talking about Kalar being dead, and she's like, "Are you still mad at her?" And he's like, "Well, of course not." And I feel like a lesser show would have just left it at that. Like, no, of course not. I've understood. And Troy's like, but it's okay to still be mad, because she gets that Worf is still mad, even though he doesn't want to be or doesn't think he is in a way. Like, I loved delving into that.
Cool, because
opening up about Kalar.
Yeah, I kept thinking up until then, I was like, guys, this kid's essentially was an orphan. I mean, he lost his mom, and then his dad's like, "Hey, I'll see you in a while." I mean, that's huge. Yeah. I mean, I also wrote that he is a Klingon in the sense he's taking other people's property. He's being a bully. Sounds like a Klingon to me. So
that circles back.
Every Klingon I've met, except for Worf, that's the way they have.
Yeah. It's so strange. To what Jimmy was saying. Yeah, it was unusually good for, I think, a lot of show standards, honestly. Just you don't really get to see those counseling sessions happen or that way, and it feels like that they've skated over a lot of those things. And finally, we get to that with Troy, and I feel like knowing something that's going to happen in the future in this series, that this is a good. This feels like it's breaking.
The seeds were planted, yeah.
Some seeds that the rapport between Worf and Troy.
I think Alexander brings them a lot closer, and I don't think they would have gone where they go with them the rest of the series without Alexander.
Where no man has gone before.
I mean, there have been men that have gone before. Riker, first and foremost.
Yes. That was the worst.
You could almost say where no woman has gone before, because very few women have gone there.
Yeah,
that is true.
So I don't know if you caught or paid much attention to Worf's story to Alexander about Kales, the Unforgettable, and his battle with Molar. Was that
Kales he was talking about? Like the one we
yes.
Wow.
The battle that Worf talks about, it was actually Kales was actually referenced in the Savage Curtain, the original series episode. But this, we learned a little bit more about him, because there was Kales. We saw Kales in that original series episode, a recreation of him.
Just a quick, Worf was pronouncing it Kales, but I think we do hear it Kales in
I think we hear it both
and
ways.
So forth.
Yeah, I think we hear it both ways. But and he's been mentioned before on Next Gen as well. But that story about him battling Molar and who Kales is and his role in the Klingon Empire is a lot more front and center in future episodes of DS9, of Voyager, and of Discover. Like, there's a lot more with Kales here. Not really Discovery, Enterprise maybe, but there's a lot more of Kales to come. So that story may have been a throwaway moment, but we're going to explore that character more, and even in Next Gen in an extremely big way. So yeah, it's Kales's fight with his brother Morath that he was talking about. But they fought for 12 days and 12 nights, because Morath had broken his word and brought shame and dishonor to his family. So that's a big part of Klingon culture.
I thought the kid was going to break that statue later when he was having his tantrum, but he didn't.
That would have been. It wasn't a glass table, so you know.
That's.
So at this point in the episode, we go back to the B story with the waves. The special effects for the waves, it was like surfing, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
It did lead to one of the best everybody fall down on the bridge moments we've had yet.
I wrote down some old school bridge flopping during the test. Yeah.
Did you see Riker do the roll? Was that Riker who did that? It's like somebody actually roll over onto his butt for the.
Yeah.
Because the whole. Yeah.
And what astounds me, and I appreciate it and I understand it. But at the end, the doctor, who's played Dr. Jadar, played by Richard McGonagall, best known for 500 Days of Summer. He was the narrator. Rules of Engagement. Both the movie Rules of Engagement and the television show Rules of Engagement, which are not related at all. So two different Rules of Engagement. He's got 188 credits.
He was in the Maestro episode of Seinfeld.
Mr. Star.
He was one of the attorneys when Kramer, you remember he spilled the coffee on himself in the movie theater, and then he gets the bomb from the Maestro, and it goes away. And so he settles the deal easily, which infuriates Jackie Childs, of course.
Did anyone
put the bomb on? Did I tell you to put the bomb on?
Did anyone tell Kramer to put the bomb on? I don't remember. I don't think anyone did.
He played Senator Warren in The West Wing. Obviously not Elizabeth Warren. He was in 2 episodes of Star Trek Voyager as a different character. The same character in both episodes. He also was in Star Wars The Clone Wars as the voice of General Grievous, among other characters.
Oh, wow. I really like
the scientist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, the Jadar, not Dujar. That's a completely different thing. Jadar. Yeah, I liked him. Again, I like the scientist too. I like scientists played by great character actors. So,
but I like that the experiment, even though the ship exploded, was still a success. And I get that because it was early stages, but when it exploded and everybody got knocked over, I was thinking, oh, it's a failure. And then he's like, no, it was a success. I was like, oh yeah, it was. Okay, good. I appreciate it.
I feel like every time Starfleet tests something, they never take enough safety precautions. Because it's like Ultimate Computer. I can go on with some other examples. It's like, oh, we're going to do a test. Is there a backup plan? No. Why would we have a backup plan? This thing, we've already tested this many times. How many times? 4. Okay, let's do it. Then always something terrible happens. Like, we have a problem here. We're going to destroy a planet. Yeah.
The episode was directed by Robert Scheer, who's one of the relatively often directors. It was our story by Sarah B. Cooper and Stuart Charno. Sarah B. Cooper, best known for writing Lara Croft Tomb Raider, the movie, was also a producer on House and Homicide: Life on the Street, and more recently Continuum and Sanctuary. She also has story by credits on The Wounded from last season, which was a really good episode, and Ethics next season. So
she was a Charno when she wrote this. So it was Stuart and Sarah Charno. So I don't know if they were a couple.
Well, yeah, Stuart has the same 3 story by credits. Yeah, You may be right. I don't know. That's a good question. And then Teleplay was by Grant Rosenberg, who was a producer on Poltergeist: The Legacy and Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman. More recently, Olympus and Bitten and Lost Girl. So, as a producer. As a writer, this is his only episode of Trek that he wrote. He wrote an episode of Baywatch, wrote 10 episodes of Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman. So a couple episodes of Bitten. Though when Worf's first talking to the teacher and she's like, he's a bully and he's disruptive and everything. And Worf's just like sitting back and smiling and nodding. I really was expecting to say something like, boys will be boys, which would have been awful. Thank goodness they then continued to the other behavior, but it was just like, well, Klingon, maybe you haven't dealt with Klingon children. And it's like, oh, no, that's not the right answer. Toxic masculinity is never okay in any culture.
Well, I mean, I think we were, even earlier we were talking about like Alexander's heritage as being a factor in his behavior. I mean, like Klingon versus human and how much and so on. And it's just, should we assume, and again, these are all allegories for race. Should we assume that these kinds of speciesist things are actually what determines their behavior, or is it society? And if Alexander is meant to be in Klingon society, then sure, ship him off to a military school, so to speak. The term they weren't using, but a Klingon school, if that's where he's going to be. But I mean, if he has to live here, then
yeah. Alexander goes to the holodeck, and we see that ugly skull guy again in Worf's calisthenics program.
I'd forgotten if we'd actually ever seen him.
Like 3 times.
I'm usually down on the holodeck. I enjoyed this. I liked him beating the crap out of those guys.
It was cool.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Back to the Wave storyline, Picard once again takes the risk, just like last week. In fact, the secondary disasters felt relatively similar between the 2 episodes in a lot of ways.
They really did.
They talk about they don't have time to go around the wave. It sure looks like they could go above it or below it just fine.
I enjoyed that they had that conversation because it was like, we talk about this all the time. Oh, it's getting bigger. Well, then you just go further out.
Yeah.
That was my second note. My second of two notes was I like that they bothered to even try to explain it. It's like a good writer's room thing, even if they didn't graphically depict it well enough. But at least I don't know. Could they shown an equation? Or, I don't know. What would I've known? But at least they tried.
Yeah, it should have been a much bigger phenomenon if they couldn't go around it. It just doesn't really make sense, especially because it was going warp 7.2 and they went 7.21 so they could overtake it. Well, they could go warp 8 or 9 and go around it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Or, hey, maybe you can go under or over it.
Yeah.
Also a possibility. It wasn't a cube. It was a wave, but
it looked relatively flat.
Yeah, Stevens was the best point there. As far as, I mean, you could make the argument, which of course they didn't get around to doing, that you have to be precise. So maybe they couldn't go at a certain speed, but they might overtake it too far, or whatever. But still, no, they should have gone like warp. What's like the maximum warp anyway? What is it?
9.
9. And
9.9 or something.
They should have done that and then double back or something. Like go all the way past it, then kind of. Yeah.
And we have discussed that the warp speeds in Next Gen are a different scale than the warp speeds in original series. So warp 5 in original series is different than warp 5 in Next Gen.
Oh my God.
The engines have been upgraded. It's been 80 years. The engines have been significantly upgraded.
Well, I mean, relative to the episode, though, I guess that wouldn't have mattered. It's just...
Yeah. We get to the climax of the episode where Alexander's trapped. They didn't keep the urgency where it should be. Like, for instance, when Picard orders Riker to go with Worf, and he's like, Riker! And then Riker turns around and is like, so this is going to happen, and there's going to be some radiation, so you really only have 3 minutes, so you should probably get going, when it should just be, Riker, go! That's all you need to say, you know?
Yeah, do we need more parallels?
Riker heard everything that was happening.
Right.
He knew what the time limit was. You don't have to explain to him.
Wait, he knew the 3 minutes already?
He heard them as he was still on the bridge.
Oh.
Just in case you didn't hear that and weren't paying attention.
Yeah. They made him stop so Picard could talk to him for a good 20 seconds. It's like, no, let's go.
Okay, well, I mean, actually, it's 2 minutes 40 at this point, Riker, so...
Right. 2 minutes 35. I guess I better shut up and let you get to it. Oh, now 2:20. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm keeping you. We saw Super Dad break into the door, and then all of a sudden he was weak again, and took quite a while to get him. And then he bent down to check on him instead of just like grabbing him and getting him out, even though he knew they had a time limit. And then he became Super Dad again and lifted the beam. But then again,
I missed that.
Still took too long. Like, there wasn't the urgency there should have been of let's get him and get out. That's where the newer Star Treks do that a little bit better.
This was a thing in the 70s. I don't know if it's a thing now, but I remember it on a couple of TV shows that in the 70s there was this idea that, when somebody was in peril, people could get super strength, and like a mom could lift a car off of somebody.
Yeah, I remember that.
I didn't think that was the 70s. I thought it was the 80s, but whatever. Yeah,
it was around, turn of the decade.
Who knows? I mean, it's probably been around for decades. And we just don't even, decades even before we were born, but specifically parents and usually mothers.
Right. And so that's what I thought of when that happened. And I think in Superman, the movie, I think either Clark or Lois tells a story about, because I think they're trying to explain Superman, and somebody's like, in moments of peril, people can get super strength. It might even be Clark trying to cover himself that he's not Superman.
Yes, I think you're right. I remember that.
So
I think Michael Dorn did some great grunt acting in the lifting.
Well, I thought that both he and Frakes did that.
Yeah, I mean, that beam had to weigh like 5 pounds, so I really appreciate what they did with it. It was styrofoam. It was styrofoam. It was laying on a kid. There's no way it weighed anything.
Well, what do you think about that? The device in general. I think what they were trying to do was Worf is officially a parent because he tapped into that strength. He officially cared about his son enough to be able to tap into his adrenaline.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like I say in every Marvel movie. It's like, you know what? The villain's going to win it. If he just hadn't said anything about the hero's girlfriend, he could have got away with it. But then he had to say, I'm going to kill your girlfriend. What? Now I'm really mad.
I did chuckle that Alexander made Riker save the animals, but I didn't buy that he convinced Riker. I feel like if he had cried a little bit, then Riker may have been more.
I did enjoy Riker coming out with him And it reminded
The
me
two
of,
logs that barely moved a little bit.
if you guys remember Pee-wee's Big Adventure, when Pee-wee goes in, he's bringing out the cute animals, and then he brings out the snakes and passes out because he hates them.
That kind of occurred to me, but I wondered. I wondered why was the cage too heavy? We don't. I guess we needed some scale for that. But I guess
I don't know either. I thought he should have grabbed the cage as well because clearly these things aren't dangerous though because they had like chicken wire over that Alexander stuck his fingers through and nobody cared. So
it looked like fake plants in there, and then however much newspaper on the bottom of the cage. Yeah, however there's that weight.
Yeah, I expect him to carry the cage as well. I was a little surprised that he came out,
especially for the amount of time. So
I guess they decided it was more funny.
You have to wonder how much time that would have burned. As far as him having to open that cage, or I don't know.
But I will say, right after that, when Picard goes ahead and fires the torpedoes without knowing that they're safe, I thought that was a great moment for Picard and for the character because you have to save the whole colony, even if you have to sacrifice 2 senior officers and a child.
Right.
And you see the indecision on Picard's face, but you also see like, I'm the captain of the flagship. This is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
He made the tough decisions.
Fashion. Mm-hmm. I liked Alexander's whole Oshkosh wardrobe line.
I did too.
I thought it was better than the ones we usually see on the kids, the generic.
I feel like we still get
80s, 90s things.
Sorry, do we get those in DS9? The onesies?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're all so unflattering for adults and children, and it's just you have to have a perfect posture and be holding your gut.
Alexander wore it well though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Worf's mother looked like she was a peasant from the 1800s, though.
I get that she's supposed to be a woman from the old country, from Europe, but Russia. Is that necessary? No. Is that really necessary? Can't you be in something from that era? Or
I often guess when I have a couple of different minds about this, but when we're doing like futuristic episodes or futuristic series, when you have foreign accents. From people, dialects persisting for hundreds of years, and especially like original series, you got Chekhov, as we often see,
right?
And Scotty and so forth. Is it would that have persisted, or is it just like
Chekhov lived in the primitive Russian village with the Rosenkas. That obviously Picard, who's from France, has a British accent, so he's more cosmopolitan. The other fashion note I have before we leave Fashion Behind was when we went to 10 Forward for the Worf mom scene, there was an extra at the bar with huge hair, like a huge ponytail, biggest ponytail I've ever seen. It was glorious. It like went up and then back, but it like was huge.
I forgot about that. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. I liked it a lot. That's the kind of future hair we need.
But not the future hair we deserve.
I think I've asked this before, so I apologies to you guys and the listeners, but why is there such a gap between the helms and navigator spots and the captain chairs?
So Picard can strut around dramatically.
Okay, all right. That's because it's like, why aren't they tight? I mean, maybe it makes for better shots or whatever.
I've never thought about that before. But what?
So the Empress D, being this big diplomatic exploratory, has like big rooms. So the original series bridge is a lot more small, even though somehow they found room to expand it for the movies, even though it's still the same ship. It's bigger. Don't quite understand that. Yeah. But the next gen bridge is supposed to be big and spacious because it's like the premier ocean liner, Right. They still have plenty of Starship ships we've seen with small cramped bridges that are more utilitarian. My alternate episode is if Alexander had not been aged up, and we got an episode originally like 3 men and a little baby where Riker and Data had to help Worf care for the baby, and then we bring back the baby for 3 men and a little lady with a little bit older. That would have been some good comedy, but we would not have been able to I don't know. The Orville's maintained a baby pretty well. Yeah, actually, they've aged him quicker too, haven't they?
At one point, the boy. Alexander says, he says
Leslie wasn't in this.
To Worf, he says, I understand you're and somehow he puts a gap between, he ends up saying, I understand you're ashamed of me. But I thought he was going to say, I understand you're a crappy dad, essentially, is what I thought he was going to say.
That's awesome.
That's, in my brain, just the way he dragged.
The Orville would have said it.
Yeah. have 2 on episodes and 1 on title. The one on episode is the alternate Alexander Roshenko, who runs a deli in Chicago, and it's about him in the 24th century. So it's about him.
It's a spinoff.
He's still got a Chicago accent. Yeah, exactly.
Set 30 years later.
Yeah.
Or 70 years later. I don't know how old you want him to be.
You know what? He's learning the deli business from his dad. So
Worf's not in the deli business.
Sorry, his grandfather. His grandfather.
Then you've got a series. I would love to see a series with Sergei and Elena.
Worf visits there, and like, we ain't got any of that, whatever.
That's a multi-camera sitcom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
The other one is, this just struck me as many times as we said it during this episode. My name is Alexander Roshenko.
I think I used that joke last time he was on the show.
we probably did. I can't say it again because then we'll get sued. And my other title was Kramer versus Klingon, because it was very much a single dad trying to learn the trial, go through the trials and tribulations of raising a kid by himself.
Trials and Tribulations? Oh, that's Deep Space Nine. Who was your annoyance in New Ground? Which wasn't a great title.
But I get why he's the way he is.
You're going to go with Alexander?
Yeah.
I'm ashamed of you, but okay. I'm more ashamed of you than Worf was of Alexander.
I've dishonored this podcast, but it's not the first time.
I'm going with Miss Kyle. For what I said earlier.
I told you I feel pretty confident that that's what it is. It's really just the way that she was. Yeah. They were really playing it to the back seats as far as her being uncomfortable and just uneasy about like broaching these subjects.
That's a good point. Almost to the point where the other kids are like, "What's your problem right now? Can you just teach us? What are you looking at?"
But I'm afraid I have to go with Alexander as well. It's just.
I'm ashamed of both of you.
They gave good reasons. I told you why I could not deal with this. I understand what's happening, but I'm not equipped to do it.
So I propose we rank Alexander on a scale of 1 to 10 the way we do Wesley whenever Alexander's in the episode. I was going to put him as a 2, but because I thought all his behavior was perfectly acceptable for a 5-year-old. But what would you two put him at?
At least like a 4. I mean,
I give him a solid 4.
It's
okay. So it's going to be a 3.3 then.
If he was in my class with me, I'd really hate that kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of what he was doing was off camera, but even what we saw him do was like what? I never did such a thing ever. Yeah, I'm telling you the truth, and except this. Sorry.
He would have stole my toy, and he would have bullied me. So yes, he gets a 4.
Okay, well, that gives him a 3.3 average, which is towards the higher end of Wesley's scores.
Yeah.
He's only going to be in like 8 episodes, and we did not rank him the first time he appeared. But I think from here on out, we rank the annoyance of him or any kid that's a major player.
Nice.
Sounds good.
Who do you want to have a drink with this week? And if anybody says Miss Kyle, I'm not happy with you.
Alexander.
Well, he's a little young for that.
Yeah, I'm here. This will put some hair on your chest. That kind of.
I thought you were going to say just.
You gonna give him prune juice?
I thought you were going to be at Chuck E. Cheese and you were going to have a beer and he was going to have a cola in a paper cup.
Then you have a touching mentor-mentee moment.
There you go. I went with, once again, a scientist, the Valerian scientist. That's who I would.
Actually, I think in this case,
Dr. Jadar.
Yeah.
Actually, in this case, it would be the teacher.
Yep. You're going with Miss Kyle?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, Keith.
I'm
going with Troy because I think even though she doesn't have kids, other than that one, that the gas cloud that she was pregnant with for 2 days and then died. Her empathy seems to make her a really good parent, and I think she could give me some parenting tips. So I'm going to go have a drink with Troy, and she's going to set me straight the way she set Worf straight. Ranking the episode, let's compare it to the other Klingon episode. Better or worse than Redemption? Part 2.
Ooh.
I'd probably go below. I'm going to go ahead and go first. I'd probably go below.
No, that's. I mean, it makes sense. This is just.
I would have gone above.
No.
Really?
Yeah. I really liked this episode. I enjoyed Worf. I enjoyed his interaction with his kid. I'm not sure about going above Unification 1 and 2. Maybe. I feel like those are just kind of pivotal and important. Those are the 2 above Redemption right now.
Gotcha.
Those are obviously pivotal and important. I'd probably put it below Unifications. just out of respect for Spock, really. But above Redemption. Although, right below Redemption 2 is Ensign Rowe. And I want to say I liked Ensign Rowe better, so go figure.
How do we do that? Always ends up happening, doesn't it? But it's like these weird reversals where it's just...
because we have to come up with a consensus place, so they're not always where we would individually put them.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's...
If you want to go below Ensign Rowe, I'm not going to fight you, because like I said, I really liked Ensign Rowe too.
I think the best part about this episode, I think that we all mentioned, was just some of the realness of the father-son relationships, the interactions with the teacher, especially with Troy. Those were they did, and I almost feel like underqualified to use this term, but they did a lot of the show not tell thing with just the way that she unpacked what was going on with Worf and the child, or the boy. Or am I doing the right accent for that? Would it be Picard saying there, or would it be Worf saying the boy?
It'd be Picard.
Yeah.
We haven't got to the best Star Trek parent-child relationship yet. That'll be DS9, Jake and Captain Spock.
Yeah, I remember liking that. But it's just there was something unusually real and slice of life about it. That's tough to get close to usually.
Yep. So above or below Ensign Rowe?
Oh man.
Keith, you go first. I'll say I think it's tough because, for lack of a better term, I think Ensign Rowe's the sexier, flashier episode.
Yes.
And this is not. This is doing some work.
Oh so man, you made it even harder just then.
That makes it was just tough for me.
I said I'd go below.
Yeah.
If I lost my fight to get it at number 3, I'm gonna go.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I was leaning. Yeah. That's where I would go to.
Yeah.
So below that is The Game, Wesley and Robin Leffler. Also a great episode, in my opinion. I do think this is a little better than that, though.
Yeah. I think as Stephen put it very aptly, is they did the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And so did we.
Put it below Ensign Rowe, above The Game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes it number 5 of 10 for the season.
All right.
Hated it.
No, this season's been really good. The only episode I didn't like this season was Silicon Avatar, really. Yeah. I know I wasn't crazy about A Matter of Time, but Silicon Avatar was the one I didn't like. Next week, Hero Worship. Another kid. Data rescues an orphan boy named Timothy from a damaged ship. As a way to repress his own pain, Timothy begins to mimic Data's personality.
I guess if we go by the Colleen Doctrine, as I call it, that if you colonize planets, you do space travel, dangerous things will happen. People are going to die. This explains all these orphans. So, yeah I guess it makes sense.
I mean, Alexander's not an orphan. He still has his daddy.
That's true.
Sort of.
He's been a de facto orphan.
He was kind of briefly an orphan, but not.
Well, he was unorphaned.
Unfortunately, while we will have classroom scenes, I can see from the IABD pictures, Alexander doesn't make an appearance in this one. So,
what about your girl, Mrs. Kyle?
No, there's a different teacher. It's a male teacher.
That's good.
He must be in a different class than Alexander. I think he's a little bit older.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Anyway, until then, live long.
Hug your parents and your kids. And prosper.
I didn't think fast enough this time.
Name of my sex tape.
Man.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?